It was a humid summer night in Alma, Arkansas. Kids ran barefoot in the grass, chasing fireflies, while parents cheered from the bleachers. The air smelled like popcorn and dust, and the sounds of aluminium bats cracked through the dark. 6-year-old Morgan Nick was there with her mom for a little league game. She was blonde, barefoot, and giggling. By the end of the game, Morgan was gone. What happened in those final minutes has haunted a small town, puzzled investigators, and captured national headlines for nearly 3 decades. Over the years, there were roadblocks, false tips, hoaxes, and televised pleas. And then, just recently, a forensic revelation that changed everything. This isn't just a story about a missing child. It's about decades of dead ends, a mother who never stopped looking, and one red pickup truck that may hold the answer to it all. Welcome to Bad Things. Join us as we retrace the steps of Morgan Nick's disappearance and uncover what most likely happened. Friday, June 9th, 1995. Alma, Arkansas. Morgan Chantel Nick was born on September 12, 1988, the eldest of 3 siblings. At 6 years old, she was a sweet, lively kid with a creative spirit. Though she could be reserved around strangers, once she settled in, she was imaginative, talkative, and full of curiosity. On that humid June evening, Morgan and her mother, Colleen, headed to Alma's Walford Field to watch a little league game. As dusk settled, Morgan sat in the bleachers, her blonde hair framing a bright face. When her friends invited her to chase fireflies near the car, she begged for permission, and Colleen, trusting the small-town safety of the setting, allowed her to go. That moment, innocent, playful, ordinary, was the last time anyone ever saw Morgan. It was around 10:45 p.m. The 2 other children returned without her. They said Morgan had still been at the car when they left her. Colleen rushed over, but Morgan was gone. A coach dialed 911. Within 6 minutes, Alma police were on site. Officers and community members began sweeping the field, surrounding woods and neighborhood streets. But by then, whatever had happened had already happened. Morgan was no longer there. It was like she vanished into thin air, Colleen told People magazine in 1996. 1 second she was there, the next, nothing. Witnesses, the man by the car. Multiple children described seeing a strange man talking to Morgan near her mother's Nissan. They said he was creepy, shirtless, and acting oddly. Witness descriptions were remarkably consistent. A white male, roughly 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, between 23 and 38 years old. He had a mustache, shoulder-length dark or salt and pepper hair, a few days of beard growth, and spoke with a thick southern accent. He wore cut-off jeans and had no shirt. Nearby, parked in the lot, was a red pickup truck with a white camper shell. The windows were covered, one with curtains, and a possible dent was noted on the rear bumper. That vehicle, too, was gone. The man and the truck vanished at the same time Morgan did. Earlier that day, a foiled attempt. What many didn't know at the time was that just hours earlier in that same town, another child had almost been taken. A man, matching the description later given at the ball field, had tried to lure a 4-year-old girl into a red truck outside a laundromat. Her mother screamed, and he fled. The girl was saved, but the man got away. The very next day, June 10th, 1995. Roughly 15 miles from Alma in Fort Smith, another attempted abduction occurred. This time, a 9-year-old girl was targeted inside a gas station. A man tried to drag her into the men's restroom. She fought back and escaped. The suspect fled. Witnesses again described a man similar in build and appearance to the one seen in Alma. Investigators believed the same individual could be responsible for all 3 incidents, within 24 hours. June 14, 1995. A false start. 5 days after Morgan vanished, police arrested a man named Mark Waddle, who drove a red pickup truck. Investigators acted swiftly, but it turned out to be a false lead. Waddle was cleared of any involvement. It was the first of many near misses and dead ends. June 26, 1995. Cruel hoax. Late one night, police responded to a call from a man claiming he had seen Morgan in Stuttgart, Arkansas. They spent hours combing the town, coordinating officers from multiple agencies. But by 4:30 a.m., the story unraveled. The tipster failed a polygraph and admitted it was all made up. He was later charged with making a false report. It had been nothing but a cruel lie. July 23, 1995. Roadblocks and flyers. As leads dried up, authorities in Alma tried something new. Roadblocks. Officers stopped drivers near town, handed out flyers, and asked if anyone had seen anything unusual around June 9th. The effort led to a handful of minor arrests for things like outstanding warrants, but nothing that helped Morgan's case. August 1995. A dangerous man emerges. A third attempted abduction, this time in Van Buren, cracked open a lead that would take years to fully unfold. An 11-year-old girl walking with her brothers was approached by a man in a red truck who offered her money. When she refused and screamed, he sped off, crashing into a telephone pole as he tried to flee. Witnesses got a license plate number. The truck belonged to Billy Jack Lynx, a 67-year-old from Crawford County. He was arrested, charged, and eventually convicted of attempted kidnapping and sexual indecency. His truck? A red 1986 Ford with a white camper shell. At the time, no link was made between Lynx and Morgan, not officially. 1996 to 1997. National spotlight. No answers. In June 1996, Colleen Nick founded the Morgan Nick Foundation, aimed at helping families with missing children and spreading awareness. The case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries, America's Most Wanted, and others. Thousands of tips came in. None led to Morgan. Arkansas's statewide Amber Alert was renamed the Morgan Nick Amber Alert in her honor. June 15, 2002. The Boonville Dig. Acting on what police called a very specific tip, crews excavated a rural property near Boonville, about 50 miles from Alma. Cadaver dogs and a backhoe were used. But by morning, investigators admitted the dig was a bust. No trace of Morgan. November 2010. A house in Spiro, Oklahoma. Another tip led investigators across the state line to an abandoned property in Spiro. DNA testing was conducted on materials found at the scene, but the results were inconclusive. They returned again in December 2017, this time with cadaver dogs that alerted on an old well. Crews excavated for 10 hours. Still nothing. February 2012. Identity theft arrests. 2 felons, Tonya Smith and James Monhart, were arrested for using Morgan Nick's identity to commit fraud. They had accessed her social security number and were trying to use it online. Investigators concluded the act was unrelated to Morgan's fate, just criminals exploiting a missing person's name. July 2020. The truck resurfaces. Behind the scenes, major developments were underway. Investigators located Billy Jack Lynx's old red pickup truck and began forensic testing using modern methods. Technicians recovered a blonde hair fiber and traces of blood from under the seat. Initial DNA testing was limited, but the hair matched Morgan's color. In November 2021, the FBI Little Rock field office named Lynx as a person of interest in the Nick case. The hair fiber wasn't definitive, yet, but another clue emerged. Fibers in the truck were indistinguishable from the fabric in the green Girl Scout shirt Morgan had worn that night. October 1st, 2024. A breakthrough. Almost 30 years after Morgan vanished, police in Alma held a press conference. For the first time, they had definitive evidence. A blonde hair found under the carpeting in Link's truck was run through advanced DNA sequencing. It revealed a first-degree genetic match with Morgan's mother, Colleen. As Alma Police Chief Jeff Pointer stated, this strongly indicates that Morgan had been in Link's truck. Additional fibers found in the floor mats matched the Girl Scout t-shirt Morgan had worn that night. Billy Jack Links, who died in prison in 2000, was formally named the prime suspect. June 2025, 30 years later. 3 decades after the ball game, Morgan Nick's story still doesn't have an ending. The DNA evidence has closed much of the investigative gap, but her remains have never been found. Colleen Nick continues to search. It took away that last bit of hope, she told ABC in 2024. But we still don't know where Morgan is. We want to find her and lay her to rest where she belongs. Theories. What could have happened to Morgan Nick? Number 1. Billy Jack Links acted alone. This is the theory that eventually aligned with law enforcement's official position. That Billy Jack Links, a 67-year-old man with a red pickup truck and a criminal history, abducted Morgan Nick without help. Links was first arrested 2 months after Morgan disappeared for attempting to lure another young girl into his truck in nearby Van Buren. At the time, the dots weren't fully connected, but his red 1986 Ford pickup, complete with white camper shell, fit the vehicle description given by witnesses at the baseball field almost exactly. In 2020, after the truck was recovered, investigators conducted modern forensic testing. Inside, they found 2 critical pieces of evidence. A blonde hair strand, later confirmed via advanced DNA testing in 2024, to share a first-degree genetic relationship with Morgan's mother. Blue-green fibers, consistent with the fabric of the green Girl Scouts t-shirt Morgan wore the night she vanished. With that, Links was named the prime suspect. Though he had died in prison in 2000, serving time for the 1995 Van Buren attempt, the forensic findings placed Morgan inside his vehicle. It was the first hard proof in nearly 30 years. From a behavioral standpoint, the theory checks out. Links had previously been convicted of sexual abuse. He lived about 8 miles from Alma. He had attempted another abduction that same summer, and his known activities fit what law enforcement calls opportunistic predator behavior. Impulsive, local, and escalating. This strongly indicates that Morgan had been in Link's truck, Alma Police Chief Jeff Pointer said in October 2024, when the DNA match was announced publicly. Critics of the theory point to Link's age. He was 67 in 1995, and question whether he would have had the strength or speed to abduct a child in such a visible, populated setting. Others counter that Links was shirtless and active and may have appeared younger or more agile than his years suggested. Importantly, no other person was ever confirmed to have used or borrowed Link's truck around the time of the abduction, and no other DNA was found in the vehicle. Number 2. Links had an accomplice, possibly his son. This theory accepts the core facts of the case, that Morgan Nick was in Billy Jack Link's red truck at some point, but suggests Link may not have acted alone. Specifically, that someone else, possibly his son, could have been the one seen at the scene, or even the one who committed the abduction. Much of this theory hinges on a consistent inconsistency, the eyewitness age mismatch. The girls who saw a man near Morgan that night described someone between 23 and 38 years old. Links was 67. In the dark, shirtless and partially hidden behind a truck, it's plausible a child could misjudge someone's age. But is it likely they'd shave off 3 decades? That question has led to a persistent theory discussed across Reddit and forums like Web Sleuths, that Link's son who reportedly did exist, may have been involved. In a detailed 2024 Reddit post from a user claiming proximity to the case and town, the author writes, Links had a son who would have been around 30 in 1995. He was known to be troubled and kept a very low profile after Billy Jack's arrest. The post goes on to describe a pattern of protectiveness in the Links family, particularly from the mother, and mentioned rumors that the younger Links had access to the red truck. While none of this has been confirmed by law enforcement, the theory has enough traction to explain several lingering issues in the case. The truck fits perfectly. It belonged to Billy Jack Links, who had been caught attempting to kidnap another child just 2 months after Morgan disappeared. The DNA evidence, a hair belonging to Morgan, places her inside the truck. The man seen by Morgan's friends did not appear to be 67 years old. If Link's son was using the truck that night, either with or without his father's knowledge, it could reconcile all 3 details. Some even speculate the elder Links may have helped cover up what happened afterward, especially given his silence before his death in 2000. This version of events would also explain why no one saw Links himself behaving suspiciously that night, despite the ball field being packed. It's possible he wasn't there at all. However, there's a major limitation. The son has never been named or investigated publicly. As of the 2024 press conference that named Billy Jack Links the prime suspect, authorities made no mention of any second person or accomplice. In fact, when the FBI appealed for information in 2021, they asked for help from anyone who knew Links, particularly in the summer of 1995, suggesting they were still piecing together his movements and relationships. So far, no witness has come forward to place a younger Links at the scene. No forensic evidence ties another person to the truck, and no charges have been filed against any relative. Still, for many following the case closely, this theory addresses a central tension, that Morgan was undeniably in the red truck, but perhaps not with the man people assumed. As one Reddit commenter put it, the kids saw a man in his 30s. The truck belonged to a 67-year-old. Maybe we've been combining 2 people into one suspect all along. Number 3. A different perpetrator entirely. A third theory suggests someone other than Billy Jack Links abducted Morgan Nick, an unknown predator never identified. Supporters question the forensic evidence, suggesting the hair could have been transferred or that someone else used Link's truck. They point to the long delay in DNA testing and the fact that Morgan's body has never been found. But no alternate suspect has ever been confirmed. The evidence now points clearly to one conclusion. Morgan Nick was abducted by Billy Jack Links, acting alone. She was last seen near her mother's car. Within minutes, she and a red pickup truck were gone. Fibers matched the Girl Scout shirt Morgan wore that night. No other DNA was found. No other suspect was ever seen. Eyewitnesses described a man in his 20s or 30s, but those accounts came from children at night under stress. Research and case history shows that children are notoriously unreliable when it comes to estimating adult ages. They tend to judge based on surface traits: hair color, clothing, posture, energy. A shirtless man with long hair and no obvious gray, who moved quickly or spoke loudly, could easily be perceived as decades younger than he was. The only person ever seen near Morgan that night was one man, acting oddly, shirtless, and lingering near the cars. Multiple children described him as creepy and said he made them uncomfortable. That behavior, especially when placed in the timeline of the failed abduction attempt earlier that same day, is striking. It matches not only Link's vehicle, but also his known pattern: sudden approaches, targeting young girls, and quickly fleeing when confronted. While the age description has fueled ongoing theories about a younger accomplice, the behavioral profile and vehicle match remain far more consistent and reliable indicators. Everything else, location, timing, conduct, points to a single offender. The pattern was already in motion. The opportunity was brief, and the evidence, found decades later, finally filled in the space where speculation used to be. No accomplice was ever identified. No second person was ever seen. Lynx didn't need help. He had the truck, the proximity, the history, and now undeniable physical proof. Unfortunately, it's unlikely we'll ever know where Morgan's remains are hidden. She could be buried deep in the dense Arkansas woods where Lynx was known to hunt and camp, or left in some remote stretch of land that's long since been overgrown and forgotten. It's also possible she was concealed somewhere far more ordinary, close to home, in plain sight, yet overlooked all these years. The only person who ever knew for certain was Billy Jack Lynx, and he died without leaving a confession, a clue, or a trace.